And I just kind of wanted to talk to you today a little bit about some of my experiences in domestic service, mostly through AmeriCorps. So I have my undergrad degree from Penn State in landscape architecture. I have a master's in political science from Illinois State. And while I was there, I did a PCMI, Peace Corps Master's International program there. So I studied applied community and economic development and served in Thailand for the Peace Corps. On top of that, I also have been in AmeriCorps twice, once with an organization called AMD in Art, which stands for Acid Mine Drainage and Art, and once as a team leader with the National Civilian Community Corps. And I've also spent roughly a year working with a group in Portland called City Repair. I was coordinating some of their different programs there. So I think that it's important when we're talking about, the 80% of the population that is underserved by design professionals, that there are people in this country that fit into that category too. And one of them that I'd like to talk about right now is reservations. So kind of to put some context, there's, this map is kind of like a visual representation of how much land Native Americans had pre-Columbus. And then this is, if this link will work, this project that somebody digitized these maps of lots of Native American land. And it's pretty, I think it's a pretty shocking way to look at it. And, you're really realizing that these populations went through a whole, genocide in a way that, they lost all their land, they lost their culture, and they're facing the repercussions of that. Okay, so, there's awareness of this fact that there's a lot of injustices that Native Americans have faced. In 1948, after World War II, the government decided to do this Indians Claim Commission to kind of say, oh, thanks for helping us during World War II, we'll look at this fact that maybe we stole some land from you. So that commission was around for 30 years. It ended in '78, and there was all of these outstanding cases, and those got switched over to a different court. I'm not really sure what happened with all of that. It's like a 200-book series of all of these decisions and everything. But this is a map of lands that were determined to still legally belong to various tribes, and that's what the colors of the different tribes. So a lot of these settlements were achieved through money. They said, okay, well, you actually should have all this land, and we'll repay it through money. And some of them were settled. There were some movements to try to use this as a way to get some land back. There has been a little bit of success with that, but not a lot. So some more statistics. And these are specifically related to school-age children. So 29.1% live in poverty, 33% live in high poverty public schools. So that's kind of an indication of their education on the reservations too. And the statistics are kind of the same for Native Americans that live in urban areas. It's about 30% attend low income public schools too. But the project that I was involved with that first exposed me to all of this was the American Indian Housing Initiative. And it was a project that was started by a professor of architectural engineering at Penn State, and I believe he was an architecture professor at Washington State. And they partnered with the Red Feather Development Group, which develops housing on reservations. And so this is from their website. So 40% of homes are overcrowded, serious physical deficiencies, and that's 6 times the national average. So a lot of these homes are trailers out on these reservations that are have horrible weather conditions, like whether it's extreme heat or extreme cold, and they're not insulated, and all of those wonderful things that go along with housing. So this, I'm not sure when this number is from, so it could have gone up, it may have gone down, but probably not too much. So 200,000 houses are needed immediately to provide adequate housing for people on reservations. So the solution that the American Indian Housing Initiative started to look at was this idea of using straw bale construction, because it's a resource that is most likely locally available. It's an easy building construction method, really easy for community members to build. It's easy to train people how to do it. It's a lot of fun too, and they have really good thermal mass, so it really insulates the house as well. So the project that, the initial project that they had done was they built a house for a family, and then they realized that they needed to back up and like make more of a demonstration thing that was central for the community to come and learn about this. So we built a literacy center on the Sheep Dull Knife Community College on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in Montana. And so the class was 1 semester of learning about reservation issues, learning about straw bale construction techniques, talking about design, talking about what are maybe some of the issues that we're going to face when we get out there. Then we spent a week out there and built it, and I mean, we built the whole thing in a week. Like, the slab was already poured, so that was already done, but we put up the walls and put on the stucco and did everything in a week. So it's, a pretty easy method to do. And then the third part was after we came back, we had our semester of like reflection and talking about the next directions the project could take. And one of the things we talked a lot about was looking at, so HUD is responsible for the housing on reservations, and the way that they do it now is that like each individual family gets a little trailer somewhere, and traditionally most of these communities lived in clusters, and so looking at trying to start, if they do more houses, to make them more in cluster buildings. And it's still an active project. I'm just not sure, like, it's been 10 years since I graduated undergrad, so I'm not really sure. I haven't really kept up with what they're doing now. The second set of communities I like to talk about is like old mining towns, like Calumet or any of these other, specifically, like I'll be talking about a whole mining town. So acid mine drainage, it comes from when the water that is seeped into these underground mines comes out, and it gets oxygenated and gets all the chemicals, the pH goes up and all the chemicals are now in the water. And so 5,000 miles of Pennsylvania waterways are impacted by this acid mine drainage, and I mean, that number is being looking at what's now impacted by fracking. And some of these towns in these coal mining areas, I'll specifically be talking about Mittendale, like it was formed by the coal mining town, or the coal mining company. So when they left, that was like, they were everything. They had the company town, people were paid with script, they had to spend it at the company town. So when these mining companies closed, they left a big vacuum in the communities that a lot of the communities haven't found ways to fill, in addition to then the environmental destruction that they're facing with these impacted mines. So this comes from the AMD and ART website. And so Alan Comp he works in the Office of Surface Mining, and he was seeing this issue throughout the coal country and decided to try to use a different approach to solve the problem. So he started this AMD and ART project. He brought in an interdisciplinary team of designers and scientists and worked with the community to come up with a way to treat their water and to kind of like also honor their history. So this is a picture of the old mining works, because they had a coke plant there too, so they were like cooking down the coal and then get into coke. And this underneath it is part of the site now, where you can just see the footprint of the building. So the concept that they came up with was this natural treatment system, because right now, most of the ways that the acid mine drainage is being treated is through like really chemically intensive and energy intensive processes. Like they do these like limestone tumblers and some other different things. So this is a passive, more of a passive system. And so the water that this system is treating is coming from, it's not a mine shaft, it's just like a crack in the ground where the water is seeping out. And it's piped over into this 7-cell treatment system. And it's there's a limestone settling pond to treat the pH, and then there's a series of, this one it's planted, so it has different plants that are treating the different chemicals, and then there's a couple settling, this is a settling pond, so it's going through different layers of organic material, and another layer of limestone to get out the rest of the contamination, the metals, heavy metals and stuff. And that goes through like an aeration pond to put the oxygen back in. I don't remember what the last pond does. And then it goes through a 7-acre constructed wetland, so that by the time the water's coming out of the treatment system, you know, it's been completely clean. And part of the funding for this wetland came through like the PennDOT, when they, you know, the road construction, wetland mitigation money. So this project also included different art pieces. One of them was being this litmus garden, which is this visible kind of, the plants along here kind of reflect how the water's being treated as it moves through the system. So at the beginning, it's red and, you know, goes to orange, yellow, green to show that the water is clean. There's a couple other art pieces that talk more about the history of the mining. There's Clean Slate Project, and then there's, you know, the community really wanted like recreational areas. So there's also like a soccer field and a baseball, and there's a little gazebo thing over here too. And so since Alan started that project, he then moved on and started to establish these Vista watershed teams, and they now partner with Michigan Tech, and there's a Vista program through Michigan Tech that I'll be taking part in next year. This is my AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps team. So this program is for the members, the Corps members, the ones that are in the white. I'm down here at the end, you can't really see me, but the team leaders wear green, the members wear white. So this is 18 to 24 is the age range for the members. You can be pretty much any age to be a team leader. And it's a residential program, so you live and work together for 11 months, and it's traveling, so you pick a region and you apply to that region, and then you work on projects in that region. So I was in Sacramento, California, so we were supposed to be on the West Coast, but it was the year that Katrina and Rita and Wilma hit, so we got sent down to the Gulf for most of our projects. So that brings me to the third community that I want to talk about, which is Louisiana, and kind of not really an issue of not having access to engineers, but maybe access to engineers that are not making decisions based off of how it's going to affect the community. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but like Louisiana loses like a football field of wetlands every minute or hour. I have to look at that again, I don't really remember. So this red is land loss from 1932 projected to 2050. So it's a little, you know, some of it's projected, so some of that land may still be here. But they lost a lot more land too after the hurricanes. And you know, if you see New Orleans up there, all this loss of wetland made the hurricane worse, because Wetlands Act is also a buffer for the storm surges that come through. And there's been this movement recently to kind of revision Louisiana, taking into account like how much land there is or isn't there. So this is the current Louisiana state route road sign, and there's an artist down in Louisiana that suggested that maybe it should look like this. He came up with this graphic by looking at actual walkable land. So like this whole section in here is like, there's land, but it's swampy. So that's why it looks like that. And a lot of this is because the Chafaya, which was another route the Mississippi had been taking that got closed off by the Army Corps of Engineers to maintain this part of the Mississippi as, you know, the port up through New Orleans. And so when they did that, they really impacted, so oyster farmers, the new sediment that's coming into the wetlands to rebuild the wetlands. And another problem, a big issue that you might be able to see a little bit better on this map, that is facing the wetlands is all of these pipes that come through here for the oil and gas industry. Because there's, you know, they do drilling out here, and there's a bunch of refineries, and you can see these lines are coming from these pipelines. And so every time they put a pipeline through the wetland, it destroys the fabric of the wetland and just increases the amount that wetland then erodes. And since the river isn't allowed to follow its natural path, it's not getting any more sedimentation coming in to rehabilitate that. So like I said, with the National Civilian Community Corps, we spent most of our year down in the Gulf. We worked in, the first project we did was in Baton Rouge, and we did blue roofing. So we went around and were putting tarps on people's roofs that had damage from the hurricanes, just like a temporary measure until they could get money from the insurance companies to fix it. But I mean, a lot of them never ended up getting their money because the insurance companies were like, oh, that was actually water damage and we didn't cover that, or that was wind damage and you're not covered for that. There's a lot of that happened after the hurricanes. Then we worked in Thibodaux, Louisiana, which is kind of over here by Homa. And there we worked with Habitat for Humanity doing a build. They were like building like a subdivision for some of the people that had lost their houses from the flooding. And then we were in Gulfport, which is in Mississippi, doing needs assessments. And this was like almost a year after the hurricane, and these people were still like living in moldy FEMA trailers, and we're like, we've already answered these questions 3 times, like why are you coming here to ask us again? Because nothing had been done. So, I mean, that's, you know, and a lot of these lands too, you know, the people that live in here, Homa is a non-federally recognized tribe. So, you know, there are some Native Americans that live down there. There's a lot of Cajuns that live down there. It's a lot of poor people that live in this land that's disappearing. And, you know, after the hurricanes, you know, there was a lot of attention given to New Orleans and what happened there, but like, that's just part of the story. Like, there's this whole other thing that's going on in Louisiana that's just pretty messed up. On top of all that too, like, this section of the Mississippi in between New Orleans and Baton Rouge is called Cancer Alley because it's got like such a high number of refineries, plastic plants, all kinds of different chemical industries that their cancer rate is like sky high because of it. So I guess, you know, like I said, like, it's not, I mean, I think that a lot of times like people think about serving others, and it's for some reason like we have this idea that like we have to go internationally to do this, where, you know, there's people in our own backyard that can benefit from people that care And this is the AmeriCorps pledge, and I just wanted to put it up there, like we had to take it as the NCCC. We had to we even did it in sign language. I don't really remember how to do that, but you know, I mean, I think it's something that's important for everybody to think about. Like, what is your responsibility as an American, and you know, how do you look at things, and how do you try to make a difference? You know, and I think this one, I try to keep this in mind, that you know, I made this commitment to do these things, to try to get these things done, to try to make this world a better place. And you know, with any of these things that you do, whether it's AmeriCorps, whether it's Peace Corps, whether it's, you know, an international design or an experience overseas, like, you're making a commitment as to what kind of person you want to be and how you want to move through this world. And you know, that's something that I really try to do. And then just this quote from Kennedy, you know, even if you may not make a difference, you at least try, I guess. That's all I got.